Hi, you are listening to the Paul McGUIRE Report, and I'm Paul McGUIRE. On today's program, once again, we're going to take a deep dive into the most important topics and subjects happening in our world today. And what are those? Well, globalism is number one. And Brave New World was a book which predicted that there would be a coming global society in terms of a scientific dictatorship, that people would be so heavily programmed in their minds, subjected to indoctrination, sleep teaching, propaganda, social engineering, psychedelic drugs, and on and on and on. People would be so moldable and shapeable that they would no longer have minds of their own. They wouldn't think for themselves. And the interesting thing is that Aldous Huxley, author of Brave New World, he was advocating that in the book. A lot of people think, oh wow, he was warning against it. No, my friends, he wasn't warning against it. He was promoting it because he was a globalist, an elitist, and an occultist. And his brother, Julian Huxley, the founder of the the founder of UNESCO, the United Nations global educational arm, and Julian Huxley was the father of transhumanism, and Julian Huxley was the primary signature on the famous Humanist Manifesto. And these two guys, the Huxley brothers, came from the Huxley family that really was a very modest family in terms of its monetary power. But they were hard workers, and they read books, and they thought, and they published papers, and they spoke, and they taught themselves science and economics and so on and so forth. And so, going back a number of generations in Great Britain's elite societies, there was a guy named T.H. Huxley, the great-grandfather of Aldous and Julian Huxley. And T.H. Huxley, his nickname was Darwin's Bulldog for his very aggressive defenses of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. And then the man who formed and shaped and molded the minds of the Huxley brothers was H.G. Wells, the sci-fi, the science fiction writer of books like War of the Worlds, The Island of Dr. Moreau about genetic engineering, The Invisible Man, and countless other sci-fi novels. And H.G. Wells also wrote a large amount of non-fiction books advocating the New World Order. In fact, H.G. Wells wrote books that were entitled The New World Order, or The Coming Global Government, etc., etc. So he downloaded and he instructed, he mentored the Huxley brothers in these things. And so the Huxley brothers united with other of Britain's globalist elites, all of which were secretly occultists and secretly socialists or Marxists. Now, as in our society today, but there's the beginning of a change, in our society today, like back then with the Huxley brothers, there were really a small handful of intelligent, intellectual, well-read, philosophical Christians who really understood science and economics and genetics and philosophy and history and so on and so forth. And many people are confused in our generation as to whether these people had a genuine faith. Well, of course they had a genuine faith. That's absurd beyond belief. Now, it may not be the little twinkle toes fill in the boxes faith that you hope for, but it wasn't any spiritual era false teacher faith. C.S. Lewis, perhaps one of the church's greatest Christian apologists in all human history, and J.R.R. Tolkien, author of Lord of the Rings, who explored areas that many Christians wouldn't explore because he wanted to write books of an exceptionally high literary value. So he wrote the Lord of the Rings series. But the Lord of the Rings series is not, as some have claimed, an apologetic for some kind of naturalistic occult belief system. No. C.S. Lewis, unlike most Christians, was a prolific science fiction writer. He wrote a whole bunch of science fiction novels to take on the so-called intellectual giants of his time, like H.G. Wells. And then C.S. Lewis wrote, of course, classical books on fantasy like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and the whole Narnia series. And then C.S. Lewis wrote the classic book on apologetics entitled Why I Am a Christian by C.S. Lewis. And C.S. Lewis was an intellectual tour de force. Now, I just want to pause for a moment. C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, and just a few others, took on the intellectual globalist elite that were promoting at that time the microscopic seed of an idea known as globalism and a one-world government. The only guys who were tough enough intellectually and in terms of being well-read and in terms of having razor-sharp analytical and debate skills were C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. And so they took people like H.G. Wells to the woodshed and stood for truth in a hostile secular age. So the same thing is happening in our age. In our time, Christians, and going back 100 years, Christians have notoriously fallen into the trap of being anti-intellectual, anti-philosophical, anti-scientific, anti-technological. And the people who have occupied those highest realms in our society, who are transcendent in terms of their intellectualism, their science, and so on and so forth, these people, tragically to say, are often occultists, globalists, communists, and others who occupy what we could label, for lack of better words, a default position. Okay, we're going to take a deep dive on today's program. We're going to blow the ceiling off the roof of our intellects. We're not going to take no for an answer. We're going to recapture and take back the land that was stolen from us by numerous generations of Christians that embraced a theological default position that was characterized by super spirituality, also known as pietism. Dr. Francis Schaeffer, who actually wrote extensively on the theological quicksand trap known as pietism, where you would embrace a kind of personal, mystical, super spirituality as the ideal. Well, that's not the ideal. Super spirituality, as identified by P.J. Spener in what was known as pietism or pietistic thought, private Bible study, personal Bible study, going to church, etc. All of these things are good things, but they're not the end all. If you can't drive your car so the rubber meets the road, ultimately you're going nowhere with pietism. And Schaeffer exposed that. Okay, so pietism it's a false theology. It's false doctrine. And although it produced good things such as personal private Bible study, going to church, prayer meetings, living a spirit-filled life, living a holy and pure life, and so on and so forth. All of those things are good, but they're not enough. Because pietism, when you strictly interpret pietism, it allows you theologically to go hide in a corner somewhere, or to go hide from the culture and society. And that is not acceptable. So Christians, during the last 100 years in America and across the world, Christians have notoriously retreated from every major power center of society, and in effect, because of their theology of retreatism, they have given over the arts, entertainment, philosophy, medicine, economics, the military, technology, filmmaking, writing, on and on and on and on. Every major power center, every major sphere of society has been captured by the powers of darkness, who have been able to gain control of individuals and vast amounts of assets to carry forth their agenda. And I read Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. It was like being hit by lightning, and I had an epiphany because I saw the society around me was exactly like Aldous Huxley warned about in Brave New World, and nobody got it. My fellow students didn't get it, the teachers didn't get it, but I was thankful because it began to shine the light in the darkness all around me. I began to understand, for lack of better words, that yeah, we really were living in a kind of matrix-oriented society. And further than that, what most people, because they're intellectually lazy, because they don't do their homework, because they are not readers or thinkers, because they don't question things, because they don't think outside of the box, because they restrict the amount of information that they receive into a very narrow channel of input, they end up, when actual true truth is presented to them, along with the documentation of this truth, along with the proof of this truth, their reaction is not to accept it as a fact, which they should if they have the documentation and scientific evidence. Their reaction is to throw stones at the person who brings them the information, label them falsely a conspiracy theorist, and continue to hide somewhere down the rabbit's hole in Alice in Wonderland. Well, that's the reason why the Illuminati, World Economic Forum, the United Nations, UNESCO, the committee of, I think it's 300 or 3,000, I can't remember, the Federal Reserve banking system, the hidden agendas of the UN, are all about the implementation of a new world order, which is a one world economic system, a one world religion, and a one world government. Now, because that has a negative connotation, they have rebranded the phrase New World Order. They now call it the Great Reset. And Klaus Schwab and others, the globalist elite, I don't mean you who listen or watch this program on a regular basis, you're up to speed, you know what's happening. The overwhelming majority of people that you talk to are clueless, and they have no idea, they have no conceptualization whatsoever just how fast this train is moving. And this train is taking society into an Orwellian Big Brother world, a brave new world beyond anything you could ever imagine. It is beyond the ability of every one of us to really grasp what is materializing right in front of our face in terms of planet Earth being ruled by an AI, artificially intelligent entity So right now, the singularity is going on behind the scenes. And the singularity is the tipping point when computers and bogs and robots surpass men and women in their knowledge and intellectual power. Subversively, behind the scenes, computers, artificial intelligence is gaining power day after day after day. And it won't be long till they rule society on a multiplicity of levels. Now, the other thing to understand is that when you read the book of Revelation and you read the description of the Antichrist and the false prophet and the technology known as the mark of the beast, 666, and the cashless society, and the fact that there are numerous ways, right now there are numerous ways, and if you use your imagination, you will know instantly what I'm talking about. There are numerous ways that submicroscopic nanobots can enter your bloodstream, your body. These microscopic nanobots can pass your blood-brain barrier and go directly into your brain. And these nanobots are self-evolving, self-growing AI microscopic robots that can float around in your bloodstream or your brain or your organs or whatever. So remember this, that nanobots don't stay in a fixed position. Nanobots have been programmed to feed off electromagnetic frequencies such as 5G cell towers. And all the 5G energy smog all around you and me feeds. These are electromagnetic frequencies that feed the growth, the acceleration, and the mission of the nanobots that are inside of you. Now you say, well, how is a nanobot inside of me? All those people who took that technology because it promised to protect you from something that could potentially kill you were sucker punched. They were deceived. Why? Because when you allowed when you read the scientific reports from medical researchers, from scientists and doctors, when you read the medical reports of precisely and exactly what were the major components in those things, and I know you know what I'm talking about, there's a reason. Those things that people took by the millions all over the world had strange ingredients, like graphene oxide was like approximately 98% of all the ingredients in these in this technology that people had to get or they would lose their jobs, in this technology that they had to get or they would be fired. 98% of that technology under medical examination, it turns out it was graphene oxide. Graphene oxide is a microscopic metal that is moldable and it grows. And graphene oxide linked up with microscopic nanobots, the graphene oxide causes these nanobots to grow inside of people like something out of a horrific sci-fi movie like Alien. No, I wish I was stretching it, but I'm not. I'm underplaying it. And the graphene oxide is a giveaway that this technology that was supposed to prevent you from getting you-know-what is a deadly technology. The other thing is people who own the homes, that funeral parlors and medical examination rooms, etc., etc. There has been wave after wave of mass deaths in America and around the world from people, from men in their prime, athletes in their prime, boys in their prime, women in their prime, people are dying in their prime by the millions and millions, especially males. You saw the videos and news videos of all these athletes dropping dead on the athletic field. Now, the media tries to censor that, but it's happening. And so, the reason that's happening is when the nanobots and the graphene oxide are exposed to the electrical EMF energy being emitted from 5G, that energy feeds the nanobots and the graphene oxide. So when they would cut open all these people that died prematurely, they would find in their veins and arteries, listen carefully, they would find in their veins and arteries these long tubular, not human, not non-human. They don't know what this stuff is made out of. So the arteries and the all the God-made tubular systems that carry blood throughout our body were clogged with these artificial. They're not man-made, and nobody knows really the origins of them. They're not man-made, and they're not created by God, and they're composed of stuff that they've never seen on this planet before. Now, this brings us to a very interesting proposition. So, before I get into that, so people are dying, men were dying and still are dying from heart attacks and cardiovascular diseases like crazy, because when they cut open their veins and arteries, they would find their veins and arteries clogged with these massive networks, like spaghetti arteries and veins, all clogging up the blood pathways like arteries, the heart system, and other systems. And so people are dropping dead left and right with a whole spectrum of heart-related diseases that they never had before. In addition, there's an epidemic, according to some medical researchers, of neurological brain damage, the loss of memory, the loss of cognitive ability, other problems like the loss of fertility, the inability for men and women for a woman to get pregnant in her prime, and all kinds of things that are aberrant are happening, and they keep covering it up. Now, another thing that happened that's very interesting, and I'm going to call this, I'm going to put it under the category of allegedly, because I've seen proof, but I have not seen the level of scientific proof and medical research that I personally demand before I can speak about it or write about it. I'm not going to call it a fact until I have not just proof. I have to have overwhelming and unquestionable proof based on the scientific method. So the other thing that's happening is, remember, we were told that the purpose of 5G cell phones was so we could have faster internet, faster cell phones. How many of you have been playing with your cell phones? And I don't have 5G, but I can turn it on if I want it. It's just the way my plan works, probably yours too. And what I discovered is my phone, my Wi-Fi, my internet is slower now that everybody has 5G in my neighborhood, now that I could use 5G if I wanted to, but whether I use it or don't use it, I see no increase in speed. And I have heard reports from all over the nation that millions of people are saying, I don't see any increase in speed now that I have 5G. And then there's discussion of what is the real purpose of all these brand new 5G cell towers. Obviously, these people say that they're not generating a higher speed of internet and a higher speed of connectivity. They're not. And then You know, these little mom and pop fix-it places where they'll open your phone, and I should have taken my phone there a long time ago, but of course I'm busy, and you're busy too, I know that. But, you know, these things are sleek and they slip out of your hand. Well, I need to go over to that mom and pop store where they'll put a safety guard, a harder plastic around it, so if I drop it I don't break it. But in an epidemic amount, these mom and pop repair stores that install the safeguard shape of the cell phone, they're saying that when they open up the cell phones, allegedly, they can't find the so-called 5G chip inside the cell phone. There's a square where the 5G chip should go, but nobody seems to be able to find the 5G microchip that generates 5G, at least among a large percentage of the cell phone manufacturers. So this brings us to the question, why are you promising increased power and connectivity, and people who know what they're talking about in broadcasting are checking out the 5G cell towers, and what they're saying is the 5G cell towers conspicuously don't seem to be generating faster speeds of internet usage or faster speeds of connectivity. There's no evidence that they're faster. And the reason for that, these engineers looked at the EMF calibrations of frequency on the 5G cell towers, and they discovered, allegedly, that these 5G cell towers were not broadcasting a wireless signal that in any way, shape, or form was even designed to begin with the capacity of increasing the speed of your cell phone. And wouldn't that be like a slap in the face? Because when you open up your cell phone, there isn't even the existence of a 5G cell phone microchip in the cell phone. There's a square where it's supposed to be placed, but these babies are coming off the assembly line with no 5G microchip in the cell phone. So it doesn't matter what kind of signal you're feeding the cell phone if the cell phone doesn't have the required 5G microchip. And what they discovered, allegedly, is what the real purpose, allegedly, may be for this new technology and demanding that everybody gets the 5G cell phones and the 5G internet service and the 5G cell towers. It appears, allegedly, that the hidden agenda is not to send out a faster signal for the purpose of connectivity and surfing the net and doing business on the net. It appears that the real purpose, the real hidden agenda behind 5G technology is to provide the 5G cell towers are broadcasting a specific numerical hertz frequency which allows all kinds of, let's call them, dark projects or black projects to be facilitated. Like, for some strange reason, you're not getting the promised higher speed internet connectivity, but you seem to be getting a lot of the detrimental, negative health, incremental death, the spread of disease through digital technologies. You seem to be having your home, your neighborhood, your schools, and your bodies and your minds bombarded with a particular spectrum of 5G frequencies that will do nothing to speed up your internet, but these dedicated 5G technologies are dedicated to being weaponized, causing depression, causing a mental fog. Remember, 5G and related technologies operates in a lower bandwidth pulse. It's an electromagnetic pulse weapon, among other things, if it's calibrated that way.